So my name is Steve Rowland from Michell Audio, and today we're going to show you in a video how to unbox and set up our Gyro SE model. So the first thing is to make sure that you have all of the component parts, and as you can see that everything is laid out in a main tray. So we have instructions, a power supply, a drive belt, arm plate, a motor, the suspension springs and their covers, 3 off, the 3 feet, some parts for the suspension and the tone arm, which we'll come to later. The main bearing, the turntable platter, and if ordered, you will have a tone arm. We can now remove this main tray, where you'll find the acrylic spider, we then remove this next sheet of polystyrene, and at the very bottom of the box you will have the turntable chassis. We can now put all these parts back so that you can keep the box if ever the turntable needs to be moved. And we can get this now out of the way. So now we have everything unboxed, we can actually start the assembly of the turntable. First thing is to screw on the feet to the threads at the bottom of the legs. On the feet. As you can see, the feet go up onto the plain portion of the legs, so when you level the spider, we don't actually see any thread. We now need to level the spider by unscrewing the feet. When building the turntable, you need to ensure that the small clip is at the back of the deck, and with the spider level we can now start to build the suspension. The suspension pillars have a thrust ball in the bottom, so you just need to make sure that you don't lose the ball when assembling, and they sit over the pillars, like spindles, sorry, that are attached to the spider. The idea of the ball is that now the deck has true 3-point suspension. One of the latest modifications we've made to the deck is that we now rubber coat the actual springs. And what that does is it cuts down on any resonance that's created from the spring. Next, we need to take the bearing. Now the bearing is an inverted bearing, so the spindle is actually attached to the chassis, and the point of support is at the top of the body. Inside the bore of the bearing there is a spiral been machined. So all the time that the bearing is turning, there's oil drawn from the well that we'll fill up through the spiral to lubricate the ball at the top, and then that will exit down through the exit hole so that you have a completely oil recirculating bearing all the time the table is turning. So the bearing gets screwed into the centre of the chassis. You can use a coin or a large flat screwdriver just to tighten the bearing. You can see on the underside of the chassis we have two counterweights, one across the front, one at the motor position, and then what that means is that the mass of the tone arm and the arm plate should equal a nominal kilo. And what that does is it puts each of the three spring positions into the same tension when the chassis is resting down on them. We also engrave the serial number of the deck into the underside of the chassis at the ear where the tone arm mounts. The chassis then locates over the three spring bases, and you need to ensure that the base is completely home in the counterboard hole of the chassis. Within the deck you'll have a file of oil. So you need a nominal 2 millimeter depth of oil in the bottom of the well. And then just place a small drop on the top and allow a small amount of oil to run down the outside diameter of the spindle. Then take the bearing body and again make sure that the ball doesn't escape, and carefully lower the body over the spindle. The black disc on the top is what we call the platter retainer, so we can take that off, and then we can simply drop the platter over the spindle and then hold it in place using the retainer. The motor for the deck is completely detached from the playing surface, has a very, very heavy large diameter base for stability with an O-ring sitting in the bottom. The motor is totally isolated from the housing, sits in a rubber cup, and we have a very, very efficient DC motor whereby it's a 24 volt motor, but we only run it at 9.6 volts. The momentum of the platter from the weights is what will keep the turntable spinning at a regular speed. We then position the motor to wherever you're going to sight the deck, and then carefully picking up the deck from the acrylic, you place the deck over the motor, centralising the motor so that it isn't touching the chassis. We then need to level the deck, and that's done by rotating anti-clockwise the knurled section at the top of the suspension pillar in all three positions. And we are looking to achieve a gap of no more than 1 to 2 millimeters from the underside of the chassis to the top of the felt protection washer. Next job is to fit the spacers for the tone arm. These are a machined small Delrin assembly with a threaded post on the bottom, tapped hole in the top. So with the 3 spacers fitted, we now can fit the arm plate. If you look on the underside of the arm plate, it will give you a position. There'll be a front sticker, and that obviously then aligns with the front fixing. That then puts the hole for the mounting of the tone arm in the correct orientation, as the hole isn't in the center of the plate. So the arm board is attached by the 3 Allen screws supplied, and they just need to be tightened down into the spacers. We can now fit the tone arm, which in this case is our own Techno arm, based on currently on a Rager 220, and it comes as part of the supply with a VTA adjuster. Now the standard unit will give you a nominal 2 millimeters of adjustment. If you need more than that, then we supply you with these 2 millimeter thick small washers that you sandwich between the underside of the tone arm and the little indents in the top face. For this, we'll leave the spacers off for now. So the VTA adjuster is sandwiched between the arm fixings and the base, and then the arm is held in place with the 3 Phillips screws provided. We'll fully tighten these screws, but when you come to install the cartridge, you will need to leave these loose to then allow you to adjust the VTA for whatever cartridge you have fitted. We can remove what we call the finger adjuster. Okay, so we'll remove the slide bush, put that to one side, and what that will do is that will now allow us and give us enough room to be able to mount that back screw. The Techno weight comes as a kit with 2 different weights. The smaller weight is for cartridges up to 6 grams. The larger is for cartridges from 6 to 13. And they simply slide onto the slide bush, ensuring that the weight is square. And you tighten the screw through the bottom of the weight to hold it in place. The weight that sits on the back of the tone arm and is adjusted using the finger adjuster. The Techno weight is a direct replacement for the weight on any of the Rager arms, and what it does is it allows you to set the tracking force by using the counterweight, and because the weight is a lot more rigid than the standard, it will give you a lot more detail from the music that you're listening to. The actual tone arm setup we'll cover in another video. Okay, so we're nearly finished. There is one slightly fiddly little job that we have to do. The easiest is to push the turntable so that this ear is overhanging whatever the turntable is sat on. You have a braided link from the arm plate. The disadvantage with having the decoupled spacers is that we break the anti-static loop for the turntable. So to remake that, we have the braided link, which then just sits over the thread that's on the underside of the chassis. And because we now have a plastic base to the tone arm, we've extended the ground wire from the actual arm itself, and we put that on there at the same time, and then we hold that all in place, bringing it into contact with the underside of the chassis with the little aluminium finger nut that we provide. So we're now in a position to do the final leveling and make sure that the platter is level. Okay, once we have that all fitted, we need to put the springs back into what we call their relaxed position. So the idea of adjusting the springs so that they're concentric is that we guarantee that the spring is in its relaxed position so that we get an even bounce on the spring in all 3 positions. We're now ready to plug in the power supply. So the serial number for the deck is replicated on the power supply on its label, and the attachment is simply with this small mini XLR plug that sits into the socket, just so. We can now fit the cosmetic covers over the springs. It may be that if you put just a touch of the bearing oil on there, just smooth that round, and that will just aid the fitting, as they are a push fit into the chassis. All that remains now is to fit the drive belt. So now all that remains is to fit the drive belt, and the drive belt for 33 will sit around the top of the small pulley on the motor, skirts round the outside of the platter and is located in the bottom groove of the platter. Switch on, and there we have your running turntable. For 45 speed, it's just a question of moving the belt from the top groove to the lower, and that will give you a 45 speed for the turntable. In addition, once you have the turntable fully assembled, within the accessories we will have supplied you with a small cable tie. You need to dress the phono leads from the tone arm and attach them using the cable tie via the small cable base at the back of the spider. You need to form yourself a very shallow loop of the phono leads, and what that means is that the weight of the phono leads won't affect the suspension of the turntable. So there we have the assembly of our Gyro SE, currently our most popular model, and I hope you enjoy the music and enjoy your Gyro SE. Thank you.